TJ here from Tap and Turn Gaming, coming at you today with some more Shadows over Innistrad spoilers. So, as promised, we're going to keep doing some spoiler videos for you guys up to the launch of Shadows over Innistrad, which I believe is in the second week of April, because I know the pre-release events for it are the 2nd and the 3rd of April. So if any of you are interested in going to pre-release for this set, that's when it'll be. And for this, we're mainly just going to go over the rares and mythic rares. If you guys want to see the commons and uncommons, because there have been quite a few of those spoiled as well, the websites I use for my spoilers are either mythicspoiler.com or mtgsalvation.com. So with that out of the way, let's jump right on into these spoilers here. So the first card we're going to look at is this guy, Diagraph Colossus. A 3-cost 2/2 zombie giant that comes in with a 1/1 counter on him for each zombie card in your graveyard. Whenever you cast a zombie spell, you put a 2/2 black zombie token onto the board tapped. So, pretty nice card. Definitely finds an auto home into any zombie tribal deck, I'm sure. This guy will probably go into my Ghoul Caller Jissa deck for sure. I mean, other than that, from an EDH outlook, that's the only way I could see this guy being really phenomenal is if you put him into Zombie Tribal, because in Zombie Tribal he's amazing. If you're not putting him in Zombie Tribal, then you're probably not playing EDH, or maybe you're playing Standard or another format. Maybe this guy would be good in other formats that aren't EDH, but from an EDH outlook, Zombie Tribal, he gets my thumbs up. Otherwise, he's okay. Next up, we have Silver Fur Partisan, a 3-cost 2/2 wolf warrior with trample. Whenever a wolf or werewolf you control becomes the target of an instant or sorcery spell, you put a 2/2 green wolf creature token onto the battlefield. Pretty cool card. Again, we're going to be looking at these cards almost strictly from an EDH standpoint. So from looking at this card in EDH, I would love to have this card if I were playing like wolf/werewolf tribal, which may be a thing in this set. Maybe they'll print a legendary wolf or werewolf in this set, which I would actually really like, because after seeing the red-green werewalker, I guess you could say, it's kind of got my gears turning in my head and building werewolf tribal. So maybe that'll be a thing. If that's a thing, I'd love to have this card in the deck. Next up, we have Behold the Beyond. It's a 7-cost black sorcery. Discard your hand, search your library for 3 cards, and put those cards into your hand, then shuffle your library. This card definitely has the potential to be really good. Especially if you have 0 cards in hand, and you cast this for 7, and you just tutor up any 3 cards. Definitely not a bad investment to find any 3 cards in your deck for 7 mana. Or maybe you just have dead cards in your hand that you don't need, and you cast this and search up any 3 cards that you need. Definitely something that I could see being part of a combo piece to find those combo pieces. But the fact that it's a mythic rare is a little bit surprising. I don't really see it being of mythic status. Sure, it lets you tutor up 3 cards, but it costs 7 mana, and you have to discard your hand. Granted, you could have no cards in hand and discard no cards and search for 3, but, I could see it at a rare, but a mythic rare, I feel like that's a little bit of a stretch, but maybe it's just me. Next up, we have Always Watching. It's a 3-cost white enchantment. Non-token creatures you control get +1/+1 and have vigilance. So it's essentially like a glorious anthem, plus the added bonus of having vigilance. But it's only for your non-token stuff, so if you're playing a token deck, you probably don't want to be playing this card, but I could definitely see myself playing this in some of my decks that run white, probably some of my tribal decks, because Anthem style effects are usually cards that I like to pack into my tribal decks. But overall, it's not a bad card. I like it. Next, we have Second Harvest. It's It's a 4-cost green instant. For each token you control, put a token onto the battlefield that's a copy of that permanent. This card's awesome. Kind of like Risk the Redeem's ability, his second ability where he copies every token that you have on the board. So this will do it for 4 mana and at instant speed. So it's definitely really nice. So I'm sure if you're playing a deck that generates lots of tokens and you're playing green, you'll probably find a home for this card in your deck. Next we have Confirmed Suspicions, a 5-cost blue instant counter target spell, and then investigate 3 times. The card's kind of meh. 5 mana to counter a spell is pretty terrible. The fact that you get to investigate 3 times is okay, but you have to invest that 2 mana into those to draw the cards off of them. So I mean, if I want to play a counter spell, I'd rather just play Counterspell or any other counterspell that doesn't cost 5 mana. So that card's kind of meh. Next up we have Asylum Visitor, a 2-cost 3/1 vampire wizard. At the beginning of each player's upkeep, if that player has no cards in hand, you draw a card and you lose 1 life. And it also has Madness, so if you were to discard it, you can cast it for its Madness cost instead of discarding it. So it's not a bad card. Very situational. If at the beginning of each player's upkeep they have to have no cards in hand for you to reap benefits off of it. So if they do, it's essentially a Phyrexian Arena. If they have cards in their hand, it's just a 3/1. So it's a very situational card. Would I try to find a home for this card in an EDH deck? Probably not. That's just me personally. Next up we have Folly Lieutenant. It's a 2-cost 1/1 human soldier. Comes in with a +1/+1 counter on it for each other human you control. Whenever another human enters the battlefield under your control, put a +1/+1 counter on it. So I want to say this is almost very, very, very similar to Champion of the Parish. Although Champion of the Parish costs 1 mana. But I know he got bigger for each other. Pretty sure he got bigger off of the humans that you play. But yeah, I mean this guy's definitely not bad. I could see myself finding a home for this guy in my Darien King of Keldor deck because he can definitely get pretty big pretty quick. So he's definitely not bad. Not something that I would prioritize over other creatures, but he's not bad. He has the potential to get really big, really fast. Next up we have Welcome to the Fold, a 4-cost blue sorcery with Madness for 2 blue and X. And this card lets you gain control of target creature if its toughness is 2 or less. If Welcome to the Fold's Madness cost was paid, instead gain control of that creature if its toughness is X or less. Yeah, there's a lot of cool creatures in Commander that you see with 2 or less toughness. But generally, if you want to be using a spell to steal a creature from somebody, you're probably going to be using it on a big nasty threat that you don't want to be staring down on the opposite end of the table. Granted, you can gain control of whatever you choose with the X cost if you Madness this card, but honestly, from my experience playing Commander, there aren't really too many things that are going to cause me to discard cards, at least, on my own doing. Maybe my opponents are playing some sort of, hand disruption deck or something like that, but I feel like Madness probably won't be too relevant in Commander, possibly in Standard or maybe other formats, but I don't really anticipate seeing Madness in Commander too much, so this card, it's kind of meh from an EDH outlook. Next we have Corrupted Graphstone, a 2-cost artifact, enters the Let's try that again. It enters the battlefield tapped, and you can tap it, choose a color of a card in your graveyard, add 1 mana of that color to your mana pool. Again, situational card. I would rather just play for 1 more mana, like a Darksteel Ingot, or, what is it? Chromatic Lantern for 1 more mana. That'll let me tap for any color of mana. This can potentially be good, but it's, dependent on what you have in your graveyard. So I would probably play other cards over this card in Commander. Next up we have Burn from Within, which I believe is going to be a new red staple in Commander. And red's not really that heavily played, so... but anyways, it's a red sorcery, 1 red and X. Burn from Within deals X damage to target creature or player. If a creature is dealt damage this way, it loses indestructible until end of turn. And if that creature would die this turn, exile it instead. I'm calling it right now. I think this is going to be a staple in red in Commander. The fact that it strips indestructible off of stuff, so, people that are playing Avacyn's against you, or maybe they're playing an artifact deck and they drop a Darksteel Forge, or, anything that grants indestructibility. Indestructibility is pretty rampant in Commander because, nobody wants their creatures to go to the graveyard because it's such a wrath-heavy meta. So, I personally cram stuff into my decks that will grant indestructibility sometimes. So, this card right here, I definitely see it being played in Commander a lot. Next up we have Engulf the Shore, a 4-cost blue instant. Return to their owner's hands all creatures with toughness less than or equal to the number of islands you control. If you're playing mono blue, it's probably really, really good. If you're not, even if you're playing 2 colors, it could be okay. If you're playing any more than 2 colors, you probably don't want to be playing this card because, you're not really going to hit too many creatures with it, unless you have all of your basics out on the board, or your duels that have the island subtype. If you're playing 3 colors, definitely other cards you could play over this. Maybe I could see it being played if you're only running 2 colors. If you're running mono blue, absolutely. But if you're playing 2 or 3 colors, better cards you could play over this. Next are the new dual lands in the cycle. So we have Port Town, which is white-blue, Fortified Village, which is green-white, Choked Estuary, blue-black, Foreboding Ruins, red-black, and Game Trail, which is red-green. So these are all the new duels in the set of the allied colors. So they come onto the battlefield tapped unless you reveal a mountain, or for this one, for instance, you reveal a mountain or a forest card. With red-black, you would reveal a swamp or mountain. The blue-black one reveal a island or swamp, so on and so on. So I could definitely see these being played. Access to more dual lands is always a welcome thing in Commander. Hell, it's a welcome thing in pretty much any format. But I could see these being almost on the same power level as like the Ravnica Shocks. Some of you may be thinking, hell no, nothing's better than the Ravnica Shocks. Don't get me wrong, Ravnica Shocks are great. But these cards definitely do have the potential to be really good and consistently come into play untapped. I definitely see these going for some money. Maybe not a ridiculous amount of money, but some money once the set comes out. Because I would imagine that people will want to get their hands on these for standard and other formats. But in EDH, I would play some of these. I could definitely consistently have these come into play untapped. So they get my thumbs up. So next up we have Sin Prodder. He's a 3-cost, 3/2 devil with menace. And at the beginning of your upkeep, reveal the top card of your deck. Any opponent may have you put that card into your graveyard. If a player does, Sin Prodder deals damage to that player equal to that card's converted mana cost. Otherwise, put that card into your hand. Pretty neat card. A 3/2 with menace isn't bad, so he has to be blocked by at least 2 or more creatures. But the fact that he lets you play with your top card, essentially. So you reveal it. If your opponent doesn't want to take damage equal to its mana cost, they let you put it into your hand. So maybe you reveal a Ulamog, let's say. And that's a pretty hard choice. So, I mean, Ulamog's like a 10 or 11 cost card. So, do I want to take 10 damage, or do I want that card to go into their hand so they can use it against me later? If I'm at a pretty hefty life total, I personally would probably take the 10 damage or 11 damage or however much he costs. I can't remember off the top of my head. But it definitely makes for some neat little interactions, and may give your opponent some pretty tough choices to make. Do I want to take take damage equal to this card's mana cost, or let them get it into their hand? So, pretty neat card. I could see it being played in Commander. Next up we have Tireless Tracker, a 3-cost 3/2 human scout. Whenever a land enters the battlefield under your control, investigate, so you get that colorless clue artifact token that you can pay 2 and sack it to draw a card. And whenever you sacrifice a clue, put a +1/+1 counter on Tireless Tracker. From an EDH standpoint, I don't really see a reason to play this card. You're probably not going to see a whole hell of a lot of stuff with Investigate and Commander. At least I don't think you will. So I don't foresee this card being played in EDH at all. Maybe in Standard, because the whole Investigate mechanic will be in Standard, so maybe we'll see play on this card in Standard or other formats, but I definitely don't think I would see this in EDH. Next up, we have Invocation of Saint Traft. It's a 3-cost Azorius colored enchantment aura. So whenever you put this on a creature, the creature has, whenever this creature attacks, put a 4/4 white angel creature token flying onto the battlefield, tapped and attacking, exile that token into combat. So minus the hexproof, it essentially turns your creature into a Geist of Saint Traft, which is pretty damn sweet. And hell, maybe you put this on a hexproof creature, it essentially is now a Geist of Saint Traft. So it's a pretty cool card. I like it a lot. For 3 mana, which is the same cost as the Geist himself, being able to spit out a 4/4 flyer tapped and attacking whenever you attack with the creature that has this on it gets my thumbs up. I like it. Plus, I also really like the art on this card. I like how the Geist of Saint Traft is kind of like putting his hands on this girl's shoulders and being like, "Oh, I'm giving you my powers." So it's pretty neat. Pretty neat card and very, very nice art. Next up, we have Hainweir Militia Captain, a 2-cost 2/2 human soldier. At the beginning of your upkeep, if you control 4 or more creatures, you transform it. So when it's transformed, it is now Westvale Cult Leader, a creature whose power and toughness are equal to the number of creatures you control. And at the beginning of your end step, put a 1/1 white and black human cleric creature onto the battlefield. So definitely not a bad card. I mean, at the very least, it's a token generator if you flip it, and depending on how many creatures you have on the board, it can be a pretty huge creature. So I mean, I would play this in token decks for sure. If you want to be generating tokens, I would definitely play this card. Next up, we have a card whose name I am probably going to butcher. So we're going to go with Triskaidekaphobia. Sure, we'll go with that. It's a 4-cost black enchantment. At the beginning of your upkeep, choose 1. Each player with exactly 13 life loses the game. Then each player gains 1 life. Or each player with exactly 13 life loses the game. Then each player loses 1 life. Pretty kooky card. I probably don't foresee myself playing this card, or anybody else for that matter, but maybe you see this card and you're like, I want to brew around that because it's so bizarre and weird. But yeah, that's that card. I don't really have much to say about it. It's just really strange. Moving on to Fevered Visions. It's a 3-cost Is It Colored enchantment. At the beginning of each player's end step, that player draws a card. If the player is your opponent and has 4 or more cards in hand, Fevered Visions deals 2 damage to him or her. So another tool for all you Nekyasar players, I'm sure. Because Nekyasar wants you to draw lots of cards and take damage and all that jazz. So I'm sure this will find a auto home into a Nekyasar deck. Next up we have Avison's Judgment, a 2-cost red sorcery with Madness for 1 red and X. So it deals 2 damage divided as you choose among any number of target creatures and or players. And if the Madness cost was paid, it deals X damage divided as you choose among those creatures and or players instead. So at its base, it's a Pyroclasm that you can divide up. Well, not really a Pyroclasm, because Pyroclasm would hit everything on the board for 2 damage. So, you could deal 2 damage to one creature, 1 damage to one and 1 damage to another, or 1 damage to one player and 1 damage to a creature, blah, 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 whatever. We all get how that works. But the Madness cost is what's really cool about it. If you dump a lot of mana into that, you can shoot around as much damage as you have mana available. But the fact that, you have to Madness it to do that, like I said previously, I don't really foresee Madness being a thing in Commander. Maybe in other formats, but I just don't see it in Commander. Next up we have Gold Knight Castigator. It's a 4-cost, 4/9 angel with flying and haste. If a source would deal damage to you, it deals double that damage to you instead. If a source would deal damage to the Castigator, it deals double that damage to it instead. I would never play this in Commander. Unless I'm playing maybe... I guess I could see it being played in like a Zedru deck if you're gifting all of your stuff away to your opponents. Maybe if you have a way to give this to your opponent, and now they're taking double damage, and this takes double damage. That's the only reason I would ever see wanting to play this card. If you were playing a deck where you're just giving your permanents away to other players, yeah, sure, play this card. But in any other circumstance, I would never play this card. Ever. The fact that it's a 4-cost, 4/9 with flying and haste, maybe we'll see it played in Standard, because that's a pretty huge body for 4 mana. So maybe the drawbacks on it will, outweigh the fact that it's a 4/9. So, maybe it'll see play in other formats, but in Commander, I personally wouldn't play it unless I was playing a deck that is giving away all of my things to other people. Next up, we have Scourge Wolf, a 2-cost 2/2 with first strike, and if you have Delirium, he has double strike. So he's kind of like Blood Knight, I guess, without Delirium, and if he's Delirium, he has double strike. Pretty basic. Here we have Prized Amalgam, a 3-cost 3/3 zombie. Whenever a creature enters the battlefield, if it entered from your graveyard, or you cast it from your graveyard, return Prized Amalgam from your graveyard to the battlefield tapped at the beginning of the next end step. So, pretty cool. It has some built-in recursion. So, if you, have some sort of way to reanimate things or cast stuff from your graveyard, you can pretty consistently get this guy back on the board. So, he's not bad. Next up, we have Inexorable Blob, a 3-cost 3/3 with Delirium. So whenever it attacks, if you have Delirium, you put a 3/3 green ooze creature token onto the battlefield, tapped and attacking. So kind of like the little Geist of St. Traft invocation, except you get a 3/3 green ooze instead of a 4/4 white flying angel. But you have to have Delirium in order for it to do that, so... Next up, we have the Gitrog monster. It's a legendary creature frog horror. It's a 5-cost 6/6 with Death Touch, so that's pretty good. At the beginning of your upkeep, sacrifice the Gitrog monster unless you sacrifice a land. You may play an additional land on each of your turns, and whenever one or more land cards are put into your graveyard from anywhere, draw a card. Needless to say, it's a pretty interesting card. It definitely has its drawbacks, but it definitely has its benefits too. So, I could see the last two clauses on it outweighing the first clause where you have to sack a land or he gets sacrificed on your upkeep. But you're in green, so, you could definitely play mana ramp and stuff like that to consistently get those lands out on the board so that you can sacrifice them away. But when you do sacrifice them away to him, he lets you draw cards. So I'm not entirely sure how to feel about this guy yet, but he has the potential to maybe be a commander or be part of the 99 in the deck. I mean, the fact that he's a 6/6 with Death Touch is definitely not bad. So, let me know what you guys think in the comments about this interesting fella. Next up, we have Forgotten Creation, a 4-cost 3/3 with Skulk, so it can't be blocked by creatures with greater power. At the beginning of your upkeep, you may discard all the cards in your hand. If you do, draw that many cards. So, it has its benefits. If you have some dead cards in your hand, you can toss them all away and draw that many, hopefully to refill your hand with useful stuff. Other than that, maybe you'd find a home in, reanimation decks where you want to be dumping stuff in the yard to get them back onto the board via reanimation style effects later on. But overall, he's not bad. Next up, we have Altered Ego, a 4-cost. It's essentially a clone, so it costs 4 and X. It can't be countered, so that's not bad. You may have it enter the battlefield as a copy of any creature, except it enters with X additional +1/+1 counters on it. So not only will it clone a creature, if you dump any mana into that X cost, it comes in bigger. So I can see this absolutely being played in Commander. And the art on this is done by my boy, Kev Walker Kid. Anyways, moving on to Seasons Past, a 6-cost green sorcery. It's a mythic rare. Return any number of cards with different converted mana costs from your graveyard to your hand, and then put this on the bottom of your library. Pretty damn good card. For 6 mana, you could potentially get a lot of cards back out of your graveyard to your hand. And this gets put on the bottom of your library, so you could potentially redraw it and use it again. So it's definitely a really nice card, especially in green. I mean, I know there's cards in green that allow you to take back permanents from your graveyard to your hand. Obviously the first thing that comes to mind is Eternal Witness. If you're playing green, you're probably playing that card. Recollect and Regrowth do similar things, but this will let you get probably, more than likely, a lot of stuff back from your graveyard to your hand, so I like this card a lot. Another mythic rare here, an Uvenwald Hydra. It's a 6-cost Hydra with reach. Its power and toughness are equal to the number of lands you control, and when this enters the battlefield, you may search your library for a land card, put it onto the battlefield tapped, and then shuffle your library. So, in creature form, probably the closest thing you'll get to a Primeval Titan. So, it definitely has its benefits, the fact that it will get huge off of the number of lands you control, and it has reach, so it can block flyers. And, when it comes in, you get a land. So, maybe you're playing blue in the deck as well. Maybe you can flicker this guy in and out, keep getting lands with him. I like him, he's pretty good. Next up, we have From Under the Floorboards. It's a 5-cost black sorcery with Madness for 2 black and X. So this lets you put 3 2/2 black zombie creature tokens onto the battlefield tapped, and you gain 3 life. If you pay its Madness cost, instead put X of those tokens onto the battlefield tapped, and you gain X life. Pretty neat card. And black gets you tokens and gains you life. That's pretty damn sweet. But again, that it's definitely better if you Madness it. But like I've said, I just don't see Madness being a thing in Commander. Next we have Ever After, which is a 6-cost black sorcery. Return up to 2 target creature cards from your graveyard to the battlefield. Each of those creatures is a black zombie in addition to its other colors and types. Put Ever After on the bottom of its owner's library. I love this card. The reason why I love it, not only does it let you resurrect 2 creatures, you get it essentially back in your library, so you can possibly draw it again, or maybe you can tutor it up and use it again. And this costs 6 mana. Other things that resurrect 1 creature, like Rise from the Grave and stuff like that, those cost around 5 mana. So for 1 extra mana, you get to resurrect an additional creature. I like it. I like it a lot. And the fact that it puts itself back into your library so you can essentially keep using it potentially is really, really nice. I like this card a lot. I definitely see myself adding this into some decks that I run that have black. And that's it. That's about it. So let me know what you guys think of these cards. If there are any ones that you're looking forward to, to get your hands on and put into a commander deck that you have, or maybe one that you're building. Let me know. Let me know what you think of my thoughts on the cards. Maybe you agree, disagree. Maybe you think Madness will see play in Commander, or some of the other cards that I don't really particularly care for. Maybe you care for them. Let me know. I really do like to hear your guys' comments and suggestions and everything like that. So leave me some comments below. Thumbs up the video if you did enjoy it, so that we know to keep making spoiler videos for you guys in the future. And if you're not already subscribed to our channel, Tap and Turn Gaming, please crush that subscribe button. We really do appreciate it. But this has been Jay with Tap and Turn Gaming. And again, hope everybody enjoyed the video, and we'll catch you later. Thanks a lot for watching.